Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Most men are never taught. Powerful people do not connect with you because you are honest, nice, or hardworking. They connect with you because you signal value, awareness, and strategic restraint. That sentence alone makes many people uneasy because it contradicts what you've been told your entire life. You were taught that if you be yourself, stay humble, and work hard, the right people will eventually notice. But if that were true, the most powerful rooms in the world will be filled with the most moral, transparent, and agreeable men. They are not. This video is not about becoming immoral. It's about becoming realistic. Machiavelli understood something most men avoid confronting. Power operates by its own logic, not a good versus evil logic, but a cause and effect logic. People at the top are not driven by emotion the way the average person is. They are driven by risk, leverage, reputation, and perception. If you don't understand that, you will always feel invisible around them. Here's a mistake many men make. When they encounter powerful people, they try to impress them. They talk too much. They overshare. They flatter. They explain themselves. They chase approval. In doing so, they unknowingly communicate one thing: need. And need is the fastest way to be ignored. Powerful people are constantly being approached by men who want something: access, validation, opportunity, status. As a result, they develop an instinctive filter. They don't listen to words. They observe behavior. They study how you carry yourself, how you speak when you stay silent, and how you handle uncertainty. This is where Machiavelli's thinking becomes relevant, not as cruelty, but as clarity. Machiavelli never assumed humans were virtuous. He assumed they were self-interested, image-conscious, and strategic when stakes were high. That assumption alone explains more about elite social dynamics than 1,000 motivational speeches ever could. And before you mentally check out thinking this is about manipulation, understand this. Ignorance of power dynamics doesn't make you moral. It makes you vulnerable. Men who refuse to learn how influence works don't avoid being manipulated. They become the easiest targets for it. This video is designed to correct that imbalance. We're going to examine 13 ruthless laws, inspired by Machiavellian psychology, that explain how connections with powerful people actually form. Not through begging, not through pretending, and not through blind loyalty, but through control, presence, and strategic alignment. This is especially important for men because society rarely teaches you how to navigate hierarchy honestly. You're told to either dominate aggressively or submit politely. But real power exists in neither extreme. It exists in calibration, knowing when to step forward and when to disappear. Powerful people respect men who don't rush to be liked, don't reveal everything at once, don't seek validation, understand unspoken rules. They don't want admirers. They want assets. That doesn't mean becoming cold or inhuman. It means understanding that respect is not given for good intentions. It's earned through competence, discretion, and self-control. Another uncomfortable truth: powerful people test you long before they trust you. Sometimes subtly, sometimes silently, sometimes by withholding attention. If you react emotionally to these tests, by trying harder, explaining yourself, or becoming resentful, you fail without even realizing it. Machiavelli would say this is natural. Power attracts scrutiny, and scrutiny demands composure. This introduction is not here to glorify ruthless behavior. It's here to strip away illusions, because illusions are expensive. They cost men opportunities, influence, and self-respect. Once you understand how powerful people think, something changes. You stop chasing proximity and start cultivating gravity. You stop trying to impress and start becoming useful without being available. You stop performing and start positioning. That shift alone separates men who remain on the outside from men who are eventually invited in. Throughout this video, you're not being taught how to exploit others. You're being taught how to stop exploiting yourself by playing a game you don't understand. If this makes you uncomfortable, that's a good sign. Growth begins when comfort ends. By the end of this series, you won't see powerful people as mystical or intimidating. You'll see them as human, strategic, cautious, and responsive to signals you can learn to control. This is not about becoming ruthless. It's about becoming aware. And awareness is the first real form of power. Law 1. Control perception before you seek access. Before a powerful person ever listens to what you say, they decide who you are. And that decision happens silently, quickly, and often without your awareness. Most men make the mistake of believing connection starts with conversation. It doesn't. It starts with perception. Powerful people are constantly scanning their environment for signals. Not loud signals. Not flashy ones. Subtle ones. They pay attention to how you enter a room, how you observe before you speak, how you handle uncertainty, and how you position yourself when you are not the center of attention. Here's the uncomfortable part. They assume very little about your intentions, but a lot about your self-control. If you rush to introduce yourself, oversell your skills, or explain your value too quickly, you communicate anxiety. Anxiety suggests instability. Instability suggests risk. And powerful people avoid risk unless the reward is undeniable. This is why the first rule is not be impressive, but be legible. Legibility means your behavior is consistent, measured, and intentional. You don't contradict yourself. You don't chase reactions. You don't shift your personality to fit the room. You allow others to form a clear, calm picture of you on their terms. Machiavelli understood that reputation often matters more than truth. Not because truth is irrelevant, but because people act on what they believe, not what is accurate. If your presence feels grounded and deliberate, people assume competence long before you demonstrate it. Men often sabotage themselves by trying to prove value too early. They list achievements. They name drop. They talk about their struggles to appear relatable. But powerful people don't bond through oversharing. They bond through predictability and restraint. Silence, when used correctly, is not awkward. It's informative. When you don't rush to fill space, you signal that you are not desperate for attention. When you listen more than you speak, you gather information without revealing leverage. When you choose your words carefully, each sentence carries more weight. This doesn't mean being cold or antisocial. It means understanding that access is earned through stability, not enthusiasm. Another key point most men miss. Powerful people notice how others treat you before they decide how to treat you themselves. If you are overly eager, constantly available, or seeking validation from everyone, you unintentionally lower your perceived value. Scarcity, emotional and social, creates gravity. This is not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about removing unnecessary noise from how you show up. You don't need to announce your ambition. You don't need to explain your goals. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. Your behavior should do that quietly. There's a reason powerful people are drawn to men who seem slightly detached, not arrogant, but self-contained. Detachment suggests independence. Independence suggests strength. Strength invites curiosity. And curiosity is what opens doors. Imagine a professional gathering where a well-connected individual is present. Most men orbit him. They laugh too loudly at his jokes. They angle their bodies toward him. They wait for a moment to speak. One man, however, doesn't compete for attention. He speaks normally when addressed, listens carefully, and doesn't interrupt. When asked what he does, he answers simply, without exaggeration, and shifts the focus back to the conversation. Later, when that powerful individual reflects on the room, he doesn't remember the loudest voice. He remembers the calm one. Not because that man tried harder, but because he didn't. That's perception control. Powerful people don't want to feel hunted. They want to feel like they discovered something valuable on their own. When you remove urgency from your behavior, you allow them to project value onto you. This law requires discipline, especially for men who are hungry for opportunity. But hunger, when visible, repels power. Control, when visible, attracts it. Understand this clearly. You're always communicating something, even when you say nothing. The question is whether you are communicating intention or impulse. The first step to connecting with powerful people is not proximity. It's presentation. Not presentation as performance, but presentation as alignment. When your presence feels deliberate, people assume your actions are too. And that assumption changes everything. Law 2. Never lead with what you want. One of the fastest ways men disqualify themselves around powerful people is by revealing their intentions too early. You've felt this before. You meet someone influential, and almost immediately, your mind starts racing. Should I mention my project? Should I ask for advice? Should I tell them what I'm trying to build? That internal pressure to make the moment count is exactly what works against you. Powerful people are surrounded by men who want something from them. Access, endorsement, opportunity, attention. Over time, this creates a defensive awareness. They don't resent it, but they recognize it instantly. The moment your interaction becomes goal-driven, it stops being a connection and turns into a transaction. And transactions without leverage don't last. Most men believe clarity is honesty, so they lead with it. They explain their ambitions, their struggles, their plans. They think transparency builds trust. But in high-power environments, timing builds trust, not disclosure. Leading with what you want communicates dependency. Even if your request is reasonable, the signal is the same. I need something you have, and I'm hoping you'll give it to me. That puts you beneath the interaction before it has even formed. This law is not about deception. It's about sequence. Powerful people want to understand who you are before they understand what you want. They are evaluating your judgment, your self-awareness, and your emotional control. When you skip that step and move straight to desire, you remove the space for respect to develop. Think about your own experiences. When someone approaches you only when they need something, how do you feel? Even if you help them, the connection feels thin, conditional, temporary. That same dynamic exists at every level of power. Men often mistake politeness for interest. A powerful person may listen, nod, even encourage you. But listening does not mean investing. Many men walk away thinking they made progress, when in reality, they were simply tolerated. The men who stand out do something different. They allow the relationship to breathe. They don't rush to define it. They show curiosity without expectation. They engage without extracting. This is difficult because it requires patience, and patience is rare in ambitious men. But patience signals confidence. When you don't immediately ask for something, you imply that you are already moving forward, that you are not stalled, that you are not waiting for permission. Powerful people respect motion. They are drawn to men who are already in progress. Another common mistake is seeking advice too early. Advice seems harmless. It feels respectful. But advice requests still place the other person in a position of authority over you. And repeated authority imbalance erodes equality. Powerful people don't want to constantly feel like mentors. They want to feel like collaborators, observers, or peers in formation. Instead of asking, what should I do, the more grounded approach is sharing what you're already doing, briefly, without drama, and letting them engage if they choose. Silence after that is intentional. It gives them space to step in voluntarily. Men who rush to fill that silence with explanations usually don't realize they're communicating insecurity. You don't need to justify your path. If it's solid, it will hold its own. Relatability matters here. Many men have felt overlooked, underestimated, or ignored despite working hard. That frustration often leaks into conversations as urgency. But urgency makes you readable in the wrong way. Powerful people can sense when someone is trying to compress years of effort into a single interaction. And compression creates pressure. Pressure creates distance. Connection with powerful people is rarely formed in a single moment. It's formed through repeated low-pressure exposure. Familiarity without demand. Presence without agenda. This law requires you to delay gratification. To trust that if alignment exists, opportunity will surface naturally. And if it doesn't, forcing it would never have worked anyway. You are not hiding your ambition. You are containing it. When you master this, something shifts. People begin to lean in instead of pulling away. Conversations feel lighter. Interactions last longer. And when opportunities do arise, they feel earned, not begged for. The strongest position is not the man who asks first. It's the man who doesn't have to. Law 3. Stop trying to be seen as good. Be seen as solid. Many men quietly sabotage their chances with powerful people because they're overly invested in being perceived as good. Good meaning agreeable. Harmless. Polite. Always available. Always understanding. This isn't virtue. It's fear-wearing manners. From a young age, many men are taught that likability is safety, that if you're easy to deal with, you'll be accepted. But powerful people don't select men based on comfort alone. They select based on reliability under pressure. And here's the hard truth most men need to hear. Being nice is not the same as being dependable. When you constantly agree, avoid disagreement, or soften your opinions to avoid friction, you communicate fragility. You tell others, without saying it, that you are more concerned with approval than with accuracy. Powerful people cannot afford that around them. They operate in environments where decisions have consequences, where disagreement is normal, where clarity matters more than harmony. If you collapse the moment tension appears, you are mentally removed from consideration. This is where many men need to wake up. You don't earn respect by shrinking. You earn it by holding your ground without theatrics. That doesn't mean being confrontational. It means being honest without apology, direct without aggression, calm without submission. Too many men confuse humility with invisibility. They lower their voice. They hedge every statement. They say things like, I could be wrong, but even when they know they're not. Over time, this trains others to discount them. Powerful people notice this immediately. They are drawn to men whose internal structure is stable. Men who don't collapse when challenged. Men who don't overreact when questioned. Men who don't need to be right, but also don't need to be liked. Let's be blunt. If your entire identity in a room is built around being agreeable, you are not adding value. You are adding noise suppression. And powerful people can get that from anyone. What they can't get easily is grounded dissent. Men who can disagree without hostility. Men who can say, I see it differently, and then stop talking. Men who don't explain themselves into exhaustion. That restraint is rare. This law is especially relevant for men who pride themselves on being good guys. The intention may be honorable, but the outcome is predictable. You become safe, then forgettable. Power respects boundaries. Boundaries signal self-respect. Self-respect signals strength. When you say yes to everything, you imply your time is worthless. When you apologize for neutral behavior, you imply guilt where none exists. When you over-justify your choices, you imply uncertainty. Powerful people don't want to manage your emotions. They want to trust your stability. Wake up to this pattern. If you avoid discomfort at all costs, you will never be trusted with responsibility. Responsibility requires friction. It requires decisions that won't please everyone. If you can't tolerate being misunderstood, you are not ready to operate near power. This doesn't mean becoming cold or dismissive. It means developing spine. Spine is the ability to remain composed while standing by your position. It's being open to correction without collapsing into self-doubt. It's listening fully without immediately conceding. Men who lack this often mistake silence for peace. But silence driven by fear is not peace. It's avoidance. Powerful people sense avoidance, and they distance themselves from it. Here's the shift men need to make. Stop trying to be seen as good, and start aiming to be seen as consistent. Consistency builds trust. Trust builds access. You don't need to dominate conversations. You don't need to prove intelligence. You don't need to win debates. You just need to stop abandoning yourself to be liked. That abandonment is visible. When you speak less but mean more, people listen. When you disagree calmly, people remember. When you don't overreact to tension, people test you more, and that's not a bad thing. Testing is interest. This law is a call to maturity. To stop outsourcing your self-worth to reactions. To understand that respect is not given to men who avoid conflict, but to men who can withstand it without becoming unstable. Power doesn't want perfection. It wants solidity. And solidity is something you must decide to develop. Consciously, deliberately, and without apology. Power doesn't reward potential. IT rewards positioning. Here is a statement most men are not ready to hear, but need to. If powerful people are not opening doors for you, it is not because they're corrupt, unfair, or blind to your potential. It is because, from their perspective, you have not positioned yourself as necessary. That sentence alone will upset many men. And it should, because it challenges a comforting belief. That effort is enough. That talent eventually rises. That being patient and doing the right thing guarantees recognition. It doesn't. Power does not operate on moral accounting. It operates on risk management. Powerful people don't ask, who deserves this? They ask, who can handle this without costing me? And most men, without realizing it, communicate the opposite. They communicate uncertainty through over-explaining. They communicate fragility through emotional reactions. They communicate dependence through visible hunger. Then they wonder why they're overlooked. This is not an attack. It's an invitation to wake up. Because once you understand this, the resentment fades. You stop seeing powerful people as gatekeepers and start seeing them as responders. They respond to signals, to consistency, to composure, to men who already carry themselves as if responsibility is normal. The controversial part is this. Power doesn't develop men. It selects them. Development is your job. Power simply observes the result. That means no one is coming to rescue your potential. No one is scanning the room, hoping to discover hidden brilliance. If you are invisible, it is because your presence has not yet forced a reaction. That sounds harsh, but it is also liberating, because positioning is learnable. You don't need to manipulate. You don't need to deceive. You don't need to betray your values. What you need is to stop confusing humility with passivity, patience with stagnation, and goodness with weakness. Men who succeed around power understand this quietly. They don't complain publicly. They adjust privately. They learn when to speak and when to remain still. They learn how to hold eye contact without seeking approval. They learn how to disagree without emotional charge. They learn how to be present without demanding attention. And over time, something subtle happens. People begin to test them, then trust them, then involve them. Not because they asked, because they were ready before permission was given. If this conclusion makes you uncomfortable, sit with that discomfort. Ask yourself where you may have been waiting instead of positioning, where you may have been hoping to be chosen instead of becoming undeniable. This channel exists to have conversations most men avoid, not to shame, but to sharpen, not to inflate ego, but to remove illusions. And here's where I want to hear from you. If you've ever felt overlooked despite your effort, if you've ever been close to opportunity but never quite invited in, if you've ever sensed that unspoken rules were at play but couldn't name them, comment your experience. Tell me what you noticed. Tell me where you felt stuck. Tell me what changed or didn't. I read the comments. And when I see patterns, I reach out, because this is not about preaching from above. It's about building clarity together, man to man, observation to observation. You are not behind, but you are responsible. And once you accept that, power stops feeling distant. It becomes predictable. Subscribe if you're ready to stop guessing and start seeing the game clearly. The veil is already lifting.